set for. There's some ethics, even beyond the law, where, you know, let's say a pedestrian is crossing the road and it's not a pedestrian walk. Who has the right of way? You say, no, I have the right of way, and run them over. Oh, that was a good call. What are some practical things from your guys' standpoints where your ethics might be tested?
Finders keepers.
Okay. Our subject is on ethics.
Ethics means right principles, and that's kind of talking about how God's word is.
Okay. Now, ethics, by the definition of whatever website came up when we Googled it, is a principle of right or good conduct.
Awesome.
Or
And me and Lily did our Devo on ethics.
Love is patient, love is kind. Love does not envy or boast, it is not arrogant.
The 1 Corinthians 13 chapter, it really opened my eyes to that chapter. Like, I had read it before, but never really read it. I think there's things that fall into place when you're actually processing something like that, trying to figure out how it works with whatever you're going to be talking about. And so that was just a really cool chapter for me, because I realized that I'm not always careful about what I say and what I do and how I act, and even like teasing to find that fine line and stuff. And then that chapter, you know, says everything you do is supposed to be out of love. And it was like, whoa. Okay.
Can you think of an area in ethics that does not involve the truth?
integrity, morals, and ethics are closely bound.
The CIA, where they have to lie about who they are or lie about what they do in order to gain information that will then benefit us as a nation or somehow benefit us. But where do their ethics, or is it ethical to do that? Because we're taught that we can't sin, we can't lie, we can't deceive.
With regards, so you have an ethical standard, and so then, and that standard is set by truth. So there has to be some sort of, not just a relative truth, there has to be a measure of truth that that ethic has to stand up to. And then do we have the integrity to do that? Sometimes we think of ethics when it's broken, so otherwise we don't think of it. It's not really a big issue until someone does something unethical. Sometimes the law doesn't cover everything, right? Sometimes the law gives us certain parameters, but still it falls short.
We're at the top Mount Evans. And
so ethical is almost like
clouds. Really can't see much.
Sphere. How about in Colorado? What might have challenged you? Brownies.
The sprinkles on top.
Mary Jo. Yeah, so those are some things that it might be okay by the law standard, but just because there's a list in Scripture doesn't mean like, okay, I checked all those off. I'm good now, right? So ethics is that larger standard of love that you were talking about in your passage, which really encompasses it all and pulls it all together. That's why Jesus gave the ultimate answer. He gave the Jesus answer.
Yeah.
But what was it? When he was put on the spot, what was his answer? What's the greatest commandment?
Love your God with all your heart, all yourself.
And the second is likened to it too.
Love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah. And so ethically speaking, that covers the gamut as well.
I was sitting on a rock ledge, and straight down, like 200 or 300 feet, there's like nothing. And I was sitting on a ledge, so it was a rock that jutted out a few feet. And I looked straight down, and I'm like, oh, I'm glad I didn't fall.
You signed the waiver.
And there was rocks at the bottom. What?
Signed the waiver.
I did. Shouldn't have done that.
Evans?
Yeah, Mount Evans. That was interesting. I don't think I've ever driven up that far up a mountain. I don't think unless Washington. So I don't think I've ever driven up that. You know, he'd fall off easily. But that was a highlight because it's just you just fall off. And that's it.
Yeah, you're right on the edge.
Like Tim went out the farthest spot, I think. Put his legs out there, you know. Like, there he is. I could not do that.
Definitely could feel the difference in the altitude. It's like 14,250 some feet or something like that.
Foothills of Colorado to the mountains, like Mount Evans. It was great.
Me and Alex had our highest high five ever on top of Mount Evans.
Our subject is theology. The study of religious faith, practice, and experience, or the study of God and God's relation to the world, or a system of religious beliefs or ideas. Now I'm going to read Colossians 1:16. For by him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things were created by him and for him.
Covered a lot of different topics, but theology figures into all of them, and I know each and every one figures in, but this one is especially important because this goes back to our core of what we believe about God. Everything else is good, but if we just very strongly believe in a very specific context about biology or about philosophy.
So how can theology affect your worldview? Well, if you don't have God, what do you base it on then? Mud. You said mud? Okay, how does that work?
So instead we worship the earth or put ourselves in place of God. Anything.
So are you saying, therefore, you're, in a way, your own God?
Is that through every society and history, there's a basic set of morals and ethics that actually are in almost every single society and civilization that have come about. And that basically follows the 10 Commandments to a T. I essentially believe that
The theology, Devo.
Because there's a God who created me and he loves me, that the world doesn't revolve around me and I'm not at its center. So my actions are going to be
That ended up, we started talking about the
hopefully
names
shows
of God.
that I believe in something greater than myself.
Going through the alphabet.
That being God.